How fancy. Uh-oh. Oh no. There we go. Sarah the Angel. I added the. Thought it sounded better. Don't hate me. Alright. Where did we leave? We left. God is kind. What's up? What's going on? We left off. To give you. Yeah, we're in the right place. I'm trying to fix all this stuff. The chat volume super low. It should be good now.
Fast.
Yep. I think we're good.
Cool.
You're pretty scratchy, but you're there.
I'm using my AirPod Pros. It doesn't sound good?
No, now it's better. Now it's totally acceptable.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just something weird for a second then. Lord help us, Tampa. On time again. Hello. Oh, Patricia, I saw you in Discord, I think, too. I always hate the username difference. It's very hard to keep track of. But I'll learn. I saw you there. I know who you are. I got you. Pastora, hello. Pastora is such a doll. It's so hard to be angry when she enters the room. The Floof. Ruth. Bunch of weird names on TikTok. Love your page. Fellow tattooed Christian. Remnant Warrior Podcast. I gotta look at whatever you're doing, but good to have you. All right. We're just gonna roll because honestly, I'm just kind of eager. We left off at a very, very hot point after we spent 15 minutes complaining about how nothing was changing, and it was a very circular story. Everything changed. So picking up right after that, I'm tempted to go back. So we'll see. We're just gonna start where we left off. But if I feel like we have to go back and get a little bit of context, then we will. If you weren't here last Thursday, if you don't watch any of the other ones, watch that one. Or at least go to the description of the video, find the chapters we read. The link to where we're reading it from is also in there, and go read it yourself if you don't want to watch something. But it's probably some of the most important context as we move forward, if I had to guess. One other kind of housekeeping thing is next Thursday, I will not be able to stream. I have to work super late. So it's just going to be off. I might try to do Friday. Like I'll probably run a poll, and if enough people care and can show up, then maybe we'll do this on Friday instead next week. But next Thursday will be a no-go. I will try really, really hard when we're done here tonight to take it off of Discord so the notifications don't go up and there won't be anything on YouTube. So if you don't see it next Thursday, that's why. Also, unless something changed, and Ghost can correct me, I believe Ghost is going to keep the audio channel in Discord open when we're done on YouTube tonight for kind of like a meet and greet, and then a bunch of questions. Obviously, there were some conversations that just warranted more talk, and it's just easier to talk than to type all the time. It's much, you can have like an actual coherent conversation. So that's happening right after this. It'll be in the same, as far as I know, the same voice channel that's open right now on Discord. So
Yeah, I'll be here.
yeah, so just roll over there whenever this is done if you want to do that. Okay, perfect. All right, so right back in then. They began to follow Satan. Then he took Adam and Eve by the hand and began to bring them out of the cave. But when they were come a little way out of it, God knew that Satan had overcome them and had brought them out ere the 40 days were ended, to take them to some distant place and to destroy them. Then the word of the Lord again came and cursed Satan and drove him away from them. And God began to speak unto Adam and Eve, saying to them, what made you come out of the cave unto this place? Then Adam said unto God, didst thou create a man before us? For when we were in the cave, there suddenly came unto us a good old man, who said to us, I am a messenger from God unto you, to bring you back to some place of rest. And we did believe, O God, that he was a messenger from you. And we came out with him and knew not whither we should go with him, Then God said unto Adam, see that this, the father of evil arts, that's the first time that term's been used, the father of evil arts, who brought you and Eve out of the garden of delights, I believe that's also a new term. And now, indeed, when he saw that you and Eve both joined together in fasting and praying, and that you came not out of the cave before the end of the 40 days, he wished to make your purpose vain, to break your mutual bond, to cut off all hope from you, and to drive you to some place where he might destroy you. Because he was unable to do aught to you, unless he showed himself in the likeness of you, which is kind of the story so far, up until that section last week, where Satan and his hosts continually tried to edge them out of the cave, because there was something keeping the separation there. Satan had disguised himself several times prior, but he had never gone balls to the wall, which he did last week, where he took on an entirely different persona, a totally different image, everything, and he was checking all of the boxes of what to say to get these people to believe him, which he had never even remotely done before. It's as if he learned really, really hard, really, really fast, and had a full grasp on what it would take to turn them, to bring them into belief of who he was, which was a lie, who he's masquerading as. Therefore did he come to you with a face like your own, and began to give you tokens as if they were all true. But I in mercy, and with the favor I had unto you, did not allow him to destroy you, but I drove him away from you. Now therefore, O Adam, take Eve, and return to your cave, and remain in it until the morrow of the 40th day. And when you come out, go towards the eastern gate of the garden. Then Adam and Eve worshipped God, and praised and blessed him for the deliverance that had come to them from him. And they returned towards the cave. This happened at eventide of the 39th day. Then Adam and Eve stood up, and with great zeal prayed to God to be brought out of their want for strength. For their strength had departed from them through hunger and thirst and prayer, but they watched the whole of that night praying until morning. Then Adam said to Eve, arise, let us go towards the eastern gate of the garden, as God told us. And they said their prayers, as they were wont to do every day, and they went out of the cave to go near to the eastern gate of the garden. Then Adam and Eve stood up and prayed, and besought God to strengthen them, and to send them something to satisfy their hunger. But when they had ended their prayers, they remained where they were by reason of their failing strength. Then came the word of God again, and said unto them, O Adam, arise, go and bring hither 2 figs, which came up previously as well. Then Adam and Eve arose and went until they drew near to the cave. Graves, what's going on? 2 fruit trees. I want to guess where it's going, but I feel like I'm going to be wrong, so I'm not going to. But Satan, the wicked, was envious because of the consolation God had given them. So he prevented them and went into the cave and took the 2 figs and buried them outside the cave so that Adam and Eve should not find them. He also had in his thoughts to destroy them. Shocking. But by God's mercy, as soon as those 2 figs were in the earth, God defeated Satan's counsel regarding them and made them into 2 fruit trees that overshadowed the cave, for Satan had buried them on the eastern side of it. Okay. Then when the 2 trees were grown and were covered with fruit, Satan grieved and mourned and said, "Better were it to have left those figs as they were, for now, behold, they have become 2 fruit trees, whereof Adam will eat all the days of his life. Whereas I had in mind, when I buried them, to destroy them entirely and to hide them for I." This is interesting. "But God has overturned my counsel and would not that this sacred fruit should perish. And he had made plain my intention and has defeated the counsel I had formed against his servants." This is very obviously trying to teach a principle. "Then Satan went away ashamed of not having wrought out his design." It's a really odd way of picking up where we had left off. "When they ended their prayers, they remained where they were by reason of their failing strength. I feel this pain after praying, wanting to keep the tie between me and God, but it can be easy to forget." Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of depth to that contextually. I mean, yeah, it's interesting to tie it to that. But I don't know. That's a beautiful topic to like talk to people about, because I think that's one of, if I had to guess from like anecdotal experience with people, I feel that is like one of the things that people struggle with the most. And I find that people who are like true Christians, like people who are not a part of kind of the deluded side of it, struggle with it the most out of anybody, because they end up feeling guilty about it, because they think there should be like this feeling or this tie all of the time. And so when they don't feel that feeling or that tie all of the time, it grows guilt in the individual, like very often. I don't often see that, and haven't often seen that with like your average church going folk, but I think it's because they're not like really seeking it. It's been an identifier for me for like my whole life. It's like a way of testing somebody in a sense, is to ask them about that type of situation. Like, how do you feel with your connection with God? Have you ever felt it? Yes. Okay. Have you ever not felt it? Like right after? Or have you ever not felt it for weeks at a time? It's a good way to gauge like what somebody's actual, what do you want to call it? Like a journey is like, what their spiritual journey is actually like. TikTok's wild, y'all. Okay, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go one more chapter forward, but I'm considering going back, at least to that very last section where things really started to dramatically change. But now I'm worried that it's just going to go right back to the same circular deal. Circular deal. I want to hear the fig thing again. I'm down. Okay, 2 fruit trees. We're going to read it again, because I'm very open to that, because this was interesting. And is odd, in my opinion, with the rest of the story so far. So 2 fig trees. We just read this, so if you feel like you just heard it, that's why. "But Satan the wicked was envious because of the consolation God had given them." Because after Satan had done, in my opinion, a very, very good job of masquerading as something that he was not, and had this really wild, elaborate story behind who he was and why they should come with him and all this stuff, totally different than anything else we've read so far, he still failed. So he's envious. He's wicked and envious and upset. So he prevented them and went into the cave and took the 2 figs that God had directed them to gave them, and buried them outside the cave so that Adam and Eve should not find them. His intention to put them out of sight for their permanent destruction was his goal. He also had it in his thoughts to destroy them. Boom. But by God's mercy, as soon as those 2 figs were in the earth, God defeated Satan's counsel, which is an interesting way to express that, regarding them, and made them into 2 fruit trees. The figs become the trees. The fig fruits become the trees that overshadowed the cave. So in a sense, not only did they sprout, not only did they become trees, but in my opinion, the way this is written is like they were massive. They completely overshadowed the cave. for Satan had buried them on the eastern side of it. Then when the 2 trees were grown and were covered with fruit, Satan grieved and mourned and said, better were it to have left those 2 figs as they were, for now, behold, they have become 2 fruit trees, whereof Adam will eat all the days of his life. There are so many sermons in this one tiny little section. Whereas I had in mind, this is Satan, whereas I had in mind when I buried them, to destroy them entirely and to hide them for I. But God has overturned my counsel. Again, that is interesting. That's not been the normal terminology. God has overturned my counsel and would not that this sacred fruit should perish. He would not allow it to die. And he made plain my intention and has defeated the counsel I had formed against his servants. Then Satan went away ashamed of not having wrought out his design. There in 4, when Satan really explains the thing, is this a display of the Streisand effect? That's an interesting thought. Hide them for I. What is that? So here, I want to do 4 again, and that's a part of 4. So I find this really interesting. It would be really interesting to try to genuinely dissect the principle or the value that's trying to be expressed, because that's very obvious. It's very apparent. To me, it's not strictly, but definitely largely theological, mostly because of the section in 4. I feel like where all of the meat is. When he said, then the 2 trees were grown and were covered with fruit, Satan grieved and mourned and said, better were it to have left those figs as they were. In a sense, I could see this meaning not the figs, but the people. And not just the people, but like people that are under the protection of God. Better were it to have left those figs as they were, to have left them alone. Because what had happened is he had negative intentions for them. God has positive intentions for them. So even with what Satan did, which could have certainly amounted to something negative that could have destroyed the people that were under God's protection, God did not allow it. And not only did he not allow it, but he completely destroyed the intention by not just allowing the fig tree to grow, like some plants grow and they bear some fruit, whatever. But the way it's expressed is they completely overshadowed the cave. And then his fear was that Adam will eat all the days of his life, which just, it confirms the overshadowing of the cave, meaning that they were very large and were obviously producing a lot. So something Satan tries to have people not produce, or evil tries to have people not produce that which is good, that, morality. God didn't allow it. And not only not allow it, but he completely turned it on its face and it flourished. Which is like why I said there's like a million sermons in this, is because that's kind of like the story of a lot of Christian people. A lot of Christian people come from like not great backgrounds, where a lot of them are doing things that would definitely be considered evil. And I've known a lot of those people, and it's kind of like a trope almost, that the people who were the worst before end up producing like massively when they finally come to a place of figuring out this is immoral, this is moral, come under whatever you want to call it, but in this context would be like the protection of God. And not only do they flip ethically, morally, but they produce wildly. That's how I see this. That's like the principle that I take from it. Trying to hide the figs that became bigger, right? It's a beautiful story. It's a great message. It's a killer sermon. You could write a killer sermon with just that one section, because it's really, really good. And it's true. I feel like it's very, very true. It almost sounds like an echo of the tree of knowledge and evil, which I think we're about to get into from the sounds of it, possibly. But it's really hard to tell with this book. Adam eating the tree of knowledge and evil for the days of his life. Yeah, the terminology was definitely similar, for sure. I think this book does go deeper into those trees. And we've touched on it a little bit. I'm not sure if you were with us or not that night. It seems like the figs represent souls and duality, each fig being the opposite of the other. Huh. I'd have to think about that. On a whim, though, I could see why that would make sense. But God planted them, so there's like an interweaving of Satan putting them there, but God planting them. I don't know. Right, but that's kind of like the beautiful thing, is that one of the underlying messages is that like evil can do evil's thing, but depending theologically, whatever, but evil can do evil's thing. But if God wants to use something, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's almost irrelevant. I don't know if I personally believe that. but that's like a very common theological stance for a lot of Christians, is that evil can do nothing really if God chooses to overturn it. And when God chooses to overturn things, they not only get overturned, but they flourish, which is kind of what is apparent in that story. Duality for sure. Satan being an unwitting participant in what God wanted all along. Yeah, which is another, it's another perspective of looking at it. Is that God, like, I guess so two things. Is that one perspective would be Satan has full free agency, can do whatever he wants, and maybe sometimes succeeds, which is, in my opinion, like my view of how the world actually functions. I feel like I see evil succeed all the time. But with that, I've also seen what I feel is God completely overturning it and then causing it to flourish. The other perspective could be what Gosha said, which is Satan being an unwitting participant with what God wanted all along. Maybe God wanted that all along, and he was just using Satan to do it. And there are stories in the Bible that definitely promote that perspective, for sure. Who planted Satan? That's a killer question. That's a great question. I feel like there's a piece of truth in it personally. Yeah, I could see it. I don't know. There's a literal, not literal. I don't know. It seems like one of the ones that seems too tight to be literal for me, but I have no idea. If it's literal, it's a damn good story. It's a really good story. God planted an angel to be an adversary for the sake of Adam and Eve's growth, right? Which is kind of that perspective of which I think we've talked about. Isn't that kind of what you believe? Is that like the gamification? Is that evil was put here? Yeah, that's what you believe, right?
That's the way I lean. Yeah.
Right. So that makes perfect sense then with that. Yeah. Is that it's meant for growth. I don't know. I was talking to somebody about that the other day. Not my belief, but it's similar to yours. And it's an interesting way to look at it. And I totally get the draw to it. It's kind of a beautiful way to look at it, in my opinion. Like that type of stuff would definitely grow people. And I wouldn't put it past God to do that. I just don't know personally. Echoes of the Tree of Knowledge and Evil. That's a great title for a doom metal album. That's true though. It's pretty good. Piece of truth in God, taking things Satan has tried to do and making it good. Oh, right. Yeah. Then I'm totally with you. We see that all the time. In scripture, we see it all the time. And I think in real life too. I've definitely seen that. I've definitely been a part of it personally, which would make Satan being a witting participant. Right. I get the perspective for sure. I could totally see that being the reality when everything gets boiled down. A witting participant, perhaps, Mikkel. I have a hard time taking the whole Adam and Eve thing literally. I'm 100% with you. I think it makes a lot more sense as it's like it's just one of those ones like if it's literal, God, what a story. What a story. What a time. Because of how much is learned through it, like how many principles, how many values, the entire concept of original sin. Like, if that's real, man. But it would also make sense. I'm super cynical, so I have a hard time with it. It's a personal problem that I'm aware of. The angel blowing the mountain. Oh my God. I followed that conversation. I dropped that verse and then I just followed the conversation. It's really interesting. It's something I've never ever looked into at all. And you guys kind of got me to look into it for a while. Rodriguez. Well, better late than never, girl. Go to the voice quick. I got the voice, even without you here. I did a good job. And now I see you. Hold on. I'll get you in. If it lets me get you in. It's not letting me. All right, there you go. The Adam and Eve is a story of patterns that we literally live throughout our lives. Yes, I see a lot of that for absolute sure. Where is this from? Who wrote this? User, way too many numbers to say on TikTok. This is the forgotten, what is it? It's the collection from the Forgotten Books of Eden. This is Adam and Eve, text 1, book 1. It's not in the canon. It's Apocrypha.
Thank you for the recap.
For the recap?
Yeah, I didn't know where we were. Sorry, because I was.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's good. This was really good. This is one that I wrote down separately because I want to come back to it. I want to see if there are any other stories that are really closely tied in principle in any of the other apocryphal texts. I'm interested. Now that we're on the Apocrypha, I'm taking like very diligent notes because as we continue through the Apocrypha, I want to see how much of this stuff aligns across the board and how many of like similar principles, how many different or similar stories, and see if I can find any connections. Because I foresee that being a reality.
What other texts do we have to corroborate like Genesis and whatnot?
Well, so we have Adam and Eve 2,
Right.
and then time period wise, there's a handful of other ones. I have them written somewhere, but they're all apocryphal. So it's like it's all with
Right.
it's all with a grain of salt for sure. But even with the canon, like even not Genesis, I don't so much mean like the characters or the written time period of like the stories, but I mean like the time period of the actual authorship. Because I think we'll see, and I could totally be wrong, but I think we'll see a lot of similarities in the way that these things were written because the authorship is so questionable that I wouldn't be surprised if we've attributed authorship to somebody falsely or wrongly or as a lie, but we're able to pretty clearly see it as we read it. But beyond that, it could totally be a mistake. It could totally be a
honest,
mistake.
like, oops.
It could.
Yeah.
It could. I'm just cynical, but it totally
Did
could.
you ever look into the Book of Giants?
Yeah, a little bit, which is why I think I do want to read it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I do want to read it. It looks interesting.
Right?
Yeah, it looks totally interesting. So we'll definitely read it.
Hi, Lily.
It's a great read. It's dense but important. The Book of Giants. The Book of Enoch.
Oh, I was referring to Enoch.
Yeah, that's extremely dense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. We read a bunch of it on the other YouTube channel. If you want to listen to it and not read it, it's a tough read. It's a tough read, but it's extremely interesting. It's just Ghost said it really well. It's super dense. It's very, very dense.
It does line up a lot with the Book of Giants, though, from what brief info I got on it.
Yeah, I mean that'll be the most interesting part is kind of comparing the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's another one that I've become pretty excited to read. It looks very interesting. Okay. The first joy of trees. But Adam and Eve, as they drew near to the cave, saw 2 fig trees covered with fruit and overshadowing the cave. I'm glad this story didn't just cut off. That makes me very happy that we're going to continue with this. What did I miss? Why'd you just at me, Francis? I thought there was something important you wanted me to see. Do better, be better. Then Adam said to Eve, "It seems to me we have gone astray. When did these 2 trees grow here? It seems to me that the enemy wishes to lead us astray." Now we're rhyming. "Sayest thou that there is in the earth another cave than this? Yet, O Eve, let us go into the cave and find in it the 2 fig trees, for this is our cave in which we were. But if we should not find the 2 figs in it, then it cannot be our cave." They went into the cave and looked into the 4 corners of it, but found not the 2 figs. And Adam wept and said to Eve, "Are we come to a wrong cave? Then, O Eve, are we lost? It seems to me these 2 fig trees are the 2 figs that were in the cave." And Eve said, "I, for my part, do not know." So they're slowly figuring out what happened. Then Adam stood up and prayed and said, "O God, thou didst command us to come back to the cave, to take the 2 figs, and then to return to you. But now we have not found them. O God, hast thou taken them and sown these 2 trees? Or have we gone astray in the earth? Or has the enemy deceived us? If it be real, then, O God, reveal to us the secret of these 2 trees and of the 2 figs." And now my opinion about this entire thing is changing. "Then came the word of God to Adam and said unto him, O Adam, when I sent thee to fetch the figs, Satan went before you to the cave, took the figs, and buried them outside, eastward of the cave. thinking to destroy them, and not sowing them with good intent. There's the intent. Not for his mere sake, then, have these trees grown up at once. But I had mercy on you, and I commanded them to grow. And they grew to be 2 large trees, that you be overshadowed by their branches. And find rest, that I make you see my power and my marvelous works, and also to show you Satan's meanness and his evil works. For ever since you come out of the garden, he has not ceased, no, not one day, from doing you some harm. But I have not given him power over you. That's an important sentence because of some things that were said in the actual Bible. And God said, henceforth, O Adam, rejoice on account of the trees, you and Eve, and rest under them when you feel weary. But eat not of their fruit, nor come near them. There is so much here already. My entire opinion has changed, but I can't put together a coherent thought. It's getting very, very deep. But now, like, the trees are acting as something else now. They're providing something else, which is something to think about. And if I can put my thoughts together coherently, I will share it. Then Adam wept and said, O God, wilt thou again kill us, or wilt thou drive us away from before your face, and cut our life from off the face of the earth? O God, I beseech thee, if thou knowest that there be in these trees either death or some other evil, as at the first time, root them up from near our cave, and wither them, and leave us to die of the heat, of hunger, and of thirst, which was the problem prior to the beginning of this story. For we know thy marvelous works, O God, that they are great, and that by your power you can bring one thing out of another without one's wish. For your power can make rocks to become trees, and trees to become rocks. What fig trees? Like the actual 2 trees in the garden? I'm confused. So the beginning of this, I guess, of tonight, like the first part, because I think a couple other people popped in too. So very brief review is that God told them to get these figs. The figs made their way into the cave with them. They left the cave. Satan came and took the figs out of the cave, buried them in the ground. God was like, not going to happen, because Satan was trying to destroy them. So he grew them out of the ground into these massive fig trees that overshadowed the entire cave, produced a bunch of fruit, and now also give them shelter. So the figs are serving many purposes for Adam and Eve at this point. But that's where they came from, because they were hungry.
And Satan's just literally using up every opportunity he can to.
Right. Yeah. Satan knew that he had them. He knew that they had them. So he tried to destroy them so that they would go hungry. He's just trying to kill them. He's trying to kill them. He's trying to take away their faith in God, the normal stuff. So he took them, he buried them to try to destroy them, and God grew them out of the ground.
Okay. Damn.
George.
I wish I got tired.
I know, he never gets tired. His last little antic was like a full theater show. Mikkel, George is in Discord. Just so you know.
You mean Jorge?
Jorge, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
He's... okay. All right, I missed half of that. Yes, eat not of the good and evil. Eat the tree of life. Maybe this conversation happened before Adam ate the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. There's an argument for that. I guess for anybody who hasn't been with us too, quick reminder is that the most accepted belief of where this text lies is post Genesis. So the idea is that Genesis starts the story, and then if you were to take this as canon, this would be the next book in your Bible. And then after this would be Adam and Eve 2. They were removed throughout history because we decided they were not canon. They were not inspired by God. But for the sake of understanding the picture and the chronological order, would be Genesis, Adam and Eve 1, Adam and Eve 2. So we're post-Genesis. But I think there's an argument for the dating. And I think there's at least an argument for some of the stories, or at least the content, that maybe it was pre or intra and not necessarily post. But it's what makes all of this so difficult.
I just wish we had a graph, like some kind of, alleged timeline, uh, just so that I can somewhat visualize it, to see if there's any like where the parallels are and where books are overlapping, the stories are overlapping.
Yeah, I did that for the Bible because I have to see it that way too. Otherwise, I have a really
Yeah.
hard time grasping where things sit. I would like to see that. If anybody finds one, that'd be a great thing to share. If anybody can find a timeline, even without the canon, if you can find a timeline for the Apocrypha, which is going to be really hard, and just like take it with a grain of salt, but anything you can find would be cool. A timeline, like an actual line graph of the when the Apocrypha was written. If anybody can find that, please post it to Discord and tag me and anybody who cares. But we could then take that and put that next to like a biblical timeline, and that would be easy. Then we just still have to take it with a grain of salt, but at least then we'd have kind of like a general picture. I would love that. I haven't looked. I'll check when we're done tonight.
Also, Jorge put in the chat like how he can speak. So I don't know if he's trying to.
Is Jorge clear? I haven't been able to talk to Jorge. Is he cleared? Someone just needs to tell me.
I don't know. Ghost
can decide. I obviously trust Ghost fully.
Yeah, he's clear. He's good.
Okay. Then Jorge, you just have to accept this invitation I just sent you. So the way these stages work in Discord, and I guess there are other newish people here too. The way this stage in Discord, and I'll show it on YouTube in case you're not in Discord. This is called a stage. So when you enter the room, you're a part of the audience, quote unquote, and it means you can't talk. You can use the chat that is in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. You can hit it and then you can type. I don't watch that, just so you know. That's too much stuff for me to watch, but somebody does. Rodriguez saw it. If you want to talk, there's a little hand button at the bottom. You should just be able to click the hand, and then we get notified, and then we can invite you to speak, and then you're good. If you're in the speaker section and you're unmuted, you are live. So be very mindful of that, and just stay muted unless you actually want to talk.
Oh, oops.
No, you're fine. Stay muted or be quiet. Like as long as it's not coming through the speaker, it doesn't matter. But just be aware, anybody who comes into the speaker thing, anything you say at that point is live. Which is why if you're very new, you probably won't be in there because we're not gonna risk losing the YouTube because they're very strict about what can be said.
It looks like somebody posted on the Discord message part, maybe like a timeline thingy for the apocryphal text. I couldn't open it because then it kicks me off.
So let me see. Do you know where they posted it?
Right there in the yeah. Wait, no. The actual voice.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Okay. All right. Here. Oh, perfect. It fits too. All right. So, who posted that?
I have no idea.
C.
CM.
..
Yes.
Well,
oh my God, I want that on paper.
It's a part. Whoever you are, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I will download this and I'll put it in the Bible thing on Discord too, right now. So if anybody else wants to pull this up, it is there. Thank you for sending that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So next thing to do would be to find more of them and put them side by side and see how much they differ.
Right.
Right? Like that's step 2. Because it's just really hard with the apocryphal text. Either way, though, like this gives you something at least to go off of. So they have the Hebrew Bible next to the Apocrypha, which is perfect. Interesting. Okay, well, I'll hang on to this. And when we're done, I'm going to look and see what other ones I can find. Because I'm curious to see how much they do differ on the actual dating of it. It's just not... Was that Patricia?
Yeah. I just seen that, like the hand raised. Oh.
Ghost, are you able to invite to speak? You should be able to.
Oh, CMC, all of that.
Yeah, I
Like,
can.
Okay. I
I
just want to make sure.
use Discord.
All right,
I don't know how to use
Pat-
Discord either.
Patricia, you should be good, and I need to change her permissions when we're done.
Yay, so many people. Hi, guys.
Yeah, it might have been a permissions problem. I don't think I can do that.
I don't know. I'll look. If you can't, I'll make sure you can. All right, cool. So yeah, Patricia and Jorge, you're in. So just be aware if you're not muted, you're live. So be mindful. Okay. Well, anything else on the timeline, or we keep reading?
I'm good. I'm sorry I sidetracked.
No, it's good. I'm glad we got it. I'm curious to see. I'll try to find a few other ones and I'll post them in there too. And yeah, this will be good to have. So the thing is, what I'm noticing, like right off the bat, is that it's not extensive. It's got like some of the majors, like Maccabees and Judith, Tobit, but it's not extensive. Like there's way more. Unless, do I have it? Is it cutting off for me? No. So yeah, it's not extensive. So I guess that's the first issue. Is there's a lot more apocryphal text than that. So it's got some of the major ones to at least give you like a rough timeline, but there's many, many more. So if somebody's able to find those, and I'll take a look later. But it's a good start. It's a good start. It's interesting to see. I think we'll find answers when studying the botanical properties of fig and deduce their analogs. Once I heard something about the roots of the fig tree, but can't remember what specifically it was. I'm interested to see what Mikkel and Ghost come up with. Do a dive. Yeah, do a fig dive. I would also like to see that.
Oh, Joe, did you see the other timeline?
Timeline in the chat?
Yeah, there's another one. Ignore my. Sorry, I was being dumb. I posted a picture of my dog watching us all.
Okay. Ooh. All right, got it.
Joe, I think it's important to point out that you can mute your mic with the software or with the hardware, depending on what kind of mic you have. If there's a mute button on the mic, you don't have to mute with the software button.
Yeah, good point.
For Jorge, he said something about that.
Yeah, I just clicked mute on there.
Okay, so yeah, again, if you have an external mic, like a microphone that plugs into whatever you're watching on, it probably has a mute button that you can do, like I can. But if you're just using your phone or whatever and it's coming out of the speaker, I think you have to software. If you have headphones in too, I believe some headphones will mute also. It's kind of device dependent. This is really hard to see, and Discord is not letting me zoom it in. So I'm just going to put it in that same Bible section here. And you guys can look at it if you want. But that looks more extensive. And it looks like they're splitting
the genre.
Yeah, as well as the culture. So worldwide, most Bibles, English KJV, German Luther, worldwide Catholic, Latin, and then the Septuagint are on there. Yeah, that'll be interesting to look at. Okay, well, there's at least two. And I'll see what I can find also
Thank
later.
you so much.
Yeah, no, you're killing it. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. Where are you reading from? I have the Apocrypha. So it depends on what you have. I'll leave you the link right there for what we're reading out of. It's Adam and Eve 1. So from what I understand, and I could be wrong, is that I don't believe most Catholic Bibles will have this. But I could be wrong. Well, there are different versions of the Apocrypha, is what I mean. You might have it. You might not. It just depends. It's hard to say. But that's the link. So that's literally where we're reading from. I know that bees die in the fig in order for the fig to ripen. I did not know that. When I unmute, I hear the YouTube and the Discord at the same time, and it's quite disorienting. When you unmute, the mute should just affect your input, not the output. We'll have to look at that. Or if you can screen record or audio record, I might be able to figure out what's going on there. And Ghost is tech savvy too, so maybe he can help later as well. I don't think we should ignore the B angle. Seems important. B's are super important. B's are like one of the, from what I understand, they're an incredibly important thing on this planet that people underestimate dramatically. I had no idea. The bees die in the fig in order for the fig to ripen. Is that always, or
Right.
is that like sometimes, or like can fig ripen at all without bees? The land of milk and honey.
Hmm.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. That's a fun fact. Okay, Adam and Eve partake of the first earthly food. Then God looked upon Adam and upon his strength of mind, upon his endurance of hunger and thirst, and of the heat. And he changed the two figs into the two fig trees, and to two figs, as they were at first. And then said to Adam and Eve, each of you may take one fig. And they took them, as the Lord commanded. And he said unto them, go ye into the cave, and eat the figs, and satisfy your hunger, lest you die. So as God commanded them, they went into the cave about the time when the sun was setting. And Adam and Eve stood up and prayed at the time of the setting sun. Then they sat down to eat the figs, but they knew not how to eat them, for they were not accustomed to eat earthly food. They feared also that if they ate, their stomach should be burdened and their flesh thickened, and their hearts take to liking earthly food. But while they were thus seated, God, out of pity for them, sent them his angel, lest they should perish of hunger and thirst. How kind. And the angel said to Adam and Eve, God says to you that you have not strength to fast until death. Eat therefore and strengthen your bodies, for you are now animal flesh that cannot subsist without food and drink. That's important. I think that's important. One more time. God says to you that you have not strength to fast until death. Eat therefore and strengthen your bodies, for you are now animal flesh that cannot subsist without food and drink. Tie that to some of the things we know from Genesis. And if you tie that to some of the earlier things in this text, I want to see how that develops. Milk spoils quickly, honey never spoils. Duality. Honey is actually a wild thing if you do a little bit of research into it. From what I understand, honey never expires. It's one of very few things that never expires.
Hey, Joe, on the TV, on the channel, all we can see is like
Discord.
this. Can't see what
Thank
you're
you.
reading.
Gotcha. Fixed.
Sorry.
Fixed. No, thank you. Completely is relative to perspective. I believe that Adam and Eve ate a fig or the forbidden fruit in Genesis 2:15. Garden of Eden was a fruit, not even in the Garden of Eden, not even in the Garden of Genesis 1:29. Oh wow, I didn't even think about that, Ghost. You guys are now going nuts about the honey. You guys have a deep dive on honey, a deep dive on figs, and then add milk for good measure. Then the angel, 7. Then Adam and Eve took the figs and began to eat of them. So here's the thing, though. He was supposed to kind of show them how to eat it, because it seemed that they did not know how to eat it. And so God was afraid they were going to die. So he sends his angel, and the angel just kind of scolds them a little bit. Just kind of lets them know, like, this isn't going to work out for you. It's going to be bad news. And apparently that was enough to get them to figure out how to eat it. Then Adam and Eve took the figs and began to eat them. But God had put into them a mixture of savory bread and blood. There it is, Ghost. Someone needs to do the deep dive on blood. That's the thing. That's the thing that I want to see. Then the angel went from Adam and Eve, who ate of the figs, until they had satisfied their hunger. Then they put by what remained. But by the power of God, the figs became full as before, because God blessed them. After this, Adam and Eve arose and prayed with a joyful heart and renewed strength, and praised and rejoiced abundantly the whole of that night. And this was the end of the 83rd day. The blood, man, the blood. There was a lot of blood in the beginning. There was a decent amount of blood in the beginning. There was an inignorable amount of blood in the beginning, and then little scatterings of it, which is very similar to how the Bible is. There's sections of kind of not insignificant amounts of blood and mentions of blood and significance, literally, in the story of blood. And then it's kind of scattered. And then there's significance again. And then it scatters, and then significance. It's a really interesting, odd thing that just seems to perpetuate through all of the scriptures, regardless of which ones you're reading. We got to evaluate every symbol. They aren't arbitrary. True, but it's all speculation. Everything's speculation. That mixture kind of sounds yummy. Milk and honey. Isn't there a really good poetry book called Milk and Honey?
Bread and blood. Yeah, that's like the Eucharist. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Properties aren't speculation. Don't forget Romans 20. Garden of Genesis 1:29. You guys, every fruit of every tree was for food. Next, bread and blood. The properties of everything are a lesson, both plants, animals, and psychology. Like the Eucharist, not the bread and blood. I wonder if that's the same angel who fought Jacob. Everything is everything. Adam and Eve acquired digestive organs. Final hope of returning to the garden is quenched. This already suggests something pretty fantastical. And when it was day, they rose and prayed after their custom, and then went out of the cave. But as they felt great trouble from the food they had eaten, and to which they were not used to, they went about in the cave, saying to each other, "What has happened to us through eating, that this pain should have come upon us? Woe be to us, we shall die. Better for us to," they're so dramatic, "better for us to have died than to have eaten, and to have kept our bodies pure, than to have defiled them with food." They were told to. Then Adam said to Eve, "This pain did not come to us in the garden, neither did we eat such bad food there. Thinkest thou, O Eve, that God will plague us through the food that is in us, or that our inwards will come out gruesome, or that God means to kill us with this pain before he has fulfilled his promise to us?" Then Adam besought the Lord and said, "O Lord, let us not perish through the food we have eaten. O Lord, smite us not, but deal with us according to thy great mercy, and forsake us not until the day of the promise thou hast made to us." Then God looked upon them, and at once fitted them for eating food, as unto this day, so that they should not perish. Wait. The insinuation there is that they weren't fit to eat that type of food, which makes sense with the title. Adam and Eve acquire digestive organs. They're complaining of pain. Their body's unable to process that which they're eating. This, to me, is very obviously not literal.
Well,
it's illogical.
But if you're first having, I mean, if they didn't have a digestive system, is that what it's saying? The organ to digest? Because
it's what it's directly saying and also insinuating. Adam and Eve acquired digestive organs, and then the whole part is about how they're basically having like ingestion and digestion problems. It's causing a lot of pain because they weren't fit for it. So then God looked upon them and at once fitted them for eating food. So unto this day, so that they should not perish. So now, so that they don't die, God made their bodies fit to eat the food that he already told them to eat. It's kind of an odd thing.
Yeah, he had to teach them how to like chew and everything. Peel the fruit, the veggies.
But he had to change their body, right? I think that's the big thing. He had to change their body. Is the insinuation.
Okay. Unless this is a metaphor for comprehension.
I think it's only a metaphor because I don't think it makes any sense literally. It's a really odd thing. But yeah, comprehension makes sense.
Okay, was there milk and where did we get the milk and honey from, guys? Was that like before?
The milk, I think,
Bees
was
and pigs.
yeah. That was none of that was from here.
Oh,
Yeah, that was just in the chat. The milk and honey is a total chat only thing. What's happening here is God told them to eat something that they had never eaten before. They eat the stuff and then they basically become ill. They can't process it. They're not able to process the thing that God had them put inside of them. So they cry out to God. And so God's response is to make them able to process it. And he doesn't change the thing so that they're able to process it. He changes their ability to process it, which is why I like Ghost's perspective, is that it doesn't at all seem literal to me. And I think comprehension and understanding is what makes a lot of sense. They're not able to comprehend. They can't understand. They cry out to God. They are now able to understand. They can comprehend what is happening. They're able to process the food that they could not process prior.
yeah, but
Open to other theories. But I think the literal is rough. I think it'd be really hard.
I just know that like when you're like fasting, for example, and you're coming out, you have to be very careful eating. And if you don't come out of it like slowly enough, it can be really dangerous. And as embarrassing as it sounds, like when you're coming out of the fast and you start eating again, like it's almost like my mouth wasn't used to eating. So like I would bite my tongue a lot, my cheek, like it's almost like my mouth didn't know what it was doing and it had like relearned things. I don't know how to explain it, but
Yeah, I mean that's for sure, but they're very specific about the digestion.
yeah, and that's what
getting
I'm
me.
also saying too, is like, you know, when you're coming off, you have to start with like broths, and I mean, I even had to eat baby food and then go to like,
Because it made you
you know,
sick.
if you ate something that was too like dense and hard, you know, where your body had to work a little bit harder to break down, like, then yeah, it was just not going to work out.
Do you think it makes
But there's,
sense with like the greater context of everything else though? So do you think basically they've been fasting forever?
I mean, I don't know. All I'm saying is if it is literal, there are aspects that I could see that makes sense. Yeah, like how Mikkel put they had baby stomachs. So like when you have a baby and you breastfeed, you know, and then they go to baby food and then solids, like it's a process. So
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not at all arguing it. I think and I mean we're not even done, so maybe we'll get more clarity here in a second, but I just
yeah,
think
your stomach air, all kinds of stuff.
for sure. For sure. Yeah, I mean, let's see. I could definitely I see both perspectives for sure. It's about being acclimated. It applies to literally everything. I lean that direction, but we're not done. So then Adam and Eve came back into the cave, sorrowful and weeping because of the alteration in their nature. Okay, so I'm less believing the literal perspective. Then Adam and Eve came back into the cave one more time, sorrowful and weeping because of the alteration of their nature. I think on the literal side, you'd have to at least admit they're not talking about the slow process of becoming used to eating food. It seems like a pretty dramatic thing that God just did. At once, God fitted them for eating food. So I don't think the slow process works. What's up?
I think a modern concept of that would be I can't unsee it. Once you see something that's so mind-blowing, you can't unsee it and go back to the way you lived before.
Right, which in a sense is like comprehension.
Yeah.
Once you get it, you get it.
In.
Yeah. I'm there for sure. The at once was a part of it, and then the alteration of their nature. If you think about all of the mentions of nature in this type of context throughout the entirety of this text, it's all kind of been in that arena of not literal and not of the physical. It's always been the opposite. I don't
I
know.
think nature is just a set of instructions that any organism kind of lives by, whether they understand it or not.
Right, which is something outside of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, outside and inside, you could consider DNA to be in nature,
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
but it's like a system of input and output that goes
Yes.
on, I guess, forever, you know?
Yeah. Agree. You see behaving like babies, always crying and everything. No one can hear me, right? No, no one can hear you. But also, you're not muted. So you must be hardware muted. So I guess just be mindful of that. You don't show as muted in Discord. You just for some reason don't have audio coming through. So I assume like you're muted on a microphone or something. But no, nobody can hear you, as far as I know. A pair of paranoid crybabies.
They are. They freak out over everything.
Oh, totally. Totally. Yeah, it's the thesis of this text. That's what happened to me when I went through the river of Dross. I couldn't unsee things. When I came out of the escape rabbit hole, I need more context to understand what is going on there. But it's, I mean, in general, that's usually a beautiful thing, right? It's a very
I think
good
he's
and
just
positive
talking about
thing.
a perspective shift.
Right, which is a beautiful thing. I'd love to hear more about the perspective shift, more of the actual context. Okay, all right. Well, I kept cutting us off, so sorry. So at once, God fitted their bodies for eating food. We have the word digestive or digestion being thrown around. Fitted for food. They were not able to process it prior. They're able to process it now. Then Adam and Eve came back into the cave, sorrowful and weeping because of the alteration of their nature. And they both knew from that hour that they were altered beings. Double down. And their hope of returning to the garden was now cut off, that they could not enter it. This makes me think of kind of the function and the system sets. If their nature is altered, it would make a lot of sense to me why they could no longer enter the garden. They've also alluded to this a lot throughout this entire freaking text, and also just straight up said it often, that there is a distinct separation of some kind that causes the inability for the two things to mesh at a certain point. It seems like not always, not all the time, but there is some kind of cutoff, some kind of transition where it's no longer possible, or you can't cross the line, or whatever. But their hope of returning to the garden was now cut off, and they could not enter it. For that now their bodies had strange functions, and all the flesh that requires food and drink for its existence cannot be in the garden. Cannot be in the garden. Can't be in the garden. For that now their bodies had strange functions, human functions, is what seems to be what they're trying to get across, at least on its face. And all flesh that requires food and drink for its existence cannot be in the garden. They're not saying the food and drink can't be in the garden. They're saying the flesh that requires food and drink for existence cannot be in the garden. Then Adam said to Eve, "Behold, our hope is now cut off, and so is our trust to enter the garden. We no longer belong to the inhabitants of the garden, but henceforth we are earthly and of the dust," Genesis, "and of the inhabitants of the earth. We shall not return to the garden until the day in which God has promised to save us and to bring us again into the garden, as he promised us." Then they prayed to God, and he would have mercy on them, after which their mind was quieted, their hearts were broken, and their longing was cooled down. Cooled down. Interesting. Not it's unfitting to me. And they were like strangers on earth. That night Adam and Eve spent in the cave, where they slept heavily by reason of the food they had eaten.
So was sleeping like not a thing either?
Well, they're making it sound as though it's a part of the human function, I believe is the way they said it. Their bodies now have strange functions. I wouldn't be surprised. But then, no. I'd have to look back to be sure, but I'm fairly certain we've read of sleep. So I
Gosh, wait.
think they're talking more about
No.
like food coma, where they slept heavily by reason of the food. So it's not they slept by reason of the food, but heavily. Because I'm almost certain we've read a decent number of times that they fell into a sleep. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident. So I think it's more of like, I picture it like a food coma. They ate a lot, they passed out. But if anybody knows better than me, please speak up. I'm not sure.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, finally.
There you are.
Okay. Good news. I'm getting a response.
You're on. Whatever you did worked.
Awesome.
Did you have something, or are you just trying to get it figured out?
No, I'm good.
Okay, right on. I believe that as well. Like before the Father wasn't any pain. Yeah, I think that's pretty clear in Genesis, at least. I feel like they make that relatively clear.
Hey Joe, I have one interpretation. I don't know what you think about it, but
Yep.
after you've been part of like an all-night bender for studying something in college, you just want to turn your brain off.
Mm-hmm.
That could fit with they had to sleep due to what they learned, if you take the metaphor angle.
Yeah, I really like that, actually. Yeah.
I don't know if you turn your brain off or it just turns itself off. Like it's just like, nah, we ain't doing this no more.
But part of it's like conscious.
I mean, yeah, it's that moment where you're like, all right, I'm done with this.
I think it could happen either way, to be fair. I think that I've definitely had both happen, where I had no intention of stopping and my brain was just like, you're done. But definitely the other way around too, where like after you've completed the thing and you feel like you're dying inside and you can't see straight, you close your eyes and you like manually shut down. I really like that. Yeah. I didn't think about it like that, but I see this the same as you for sure, and that's perfect. Yeah. I think that's perfect. That's awesome. Yeah. Totally.
Just throwing it out there.
No, totally. 100% on board with that. All right, all right, we'll read one more real. No, we won't. Okay, so because I don't want to cut the other thing short and I got other stuff to do and I want to hang out for a few minutes. So YouTube is going to get shut off. We used to do this, maybe we'll get back in the habit of it again, but YouTube and TikTok, I guess, for those of you up there. All this is going to be shut off. There is a link to the Discord in the chat on YouTube. I think most of you are already in there. But once you go to Discord, in case you've never played around with the voice channels, if you scroll down, so from the top, you see all the red dots. And then right now, you'll see a bunch of people's pictures in there. So you just click that channel where all the people are at, and then this will open. You guys will be down here. If you raise your hand and Ghost approves it, then you will be up here. And then he might, I don't know how he's going to do it. He might put people back in the audience. I don't know. But if you're in the audience, you can't talk. If you're in the speaker thing, you can talk. And I'm not sure exactly what's happening. I think there were just some things that wanted to get talked about, whatever. So I'm going to pull myself out if I can. Otherwise, I'm just going to mute myself and hang out for a little bit. And then I'm out. So if I don't talk to you guys, I love y'all very much. And Sunday, we have Genesis again. We're getting very close to the end. And when we finish this one, we're going right into the Adam and Eve part 2. YouTube, you are done. Have a lovely evening. TikTok, you are also done.